Yeah, this is John, and this is John from All Points TV. And in-house in the studio is Lamar Davis. And how you doing there, Lamar?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. It's like Lamar and I have known each other, 30 years, 32 years.
Oh yeah, we go way back.
Yeah, it's like he was fresh out of Beecher, I think it was, and I was fresh. We're within a year or two, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was, but we were. I think we met first at Mott, and then I think we continued our camaraderie ship over to U of M as well.
Yeah, so if you want to swing that microphone just a little more in your direction, because it's gonna, just swing it back towards you a little bit, kind of like swung out, just so you can pick it up better. It's a side address microphone, but anyway, so it's over 30 some years, and you've had I think you're a year or two older than me. I think you graduated, 80?
80.
Yeah, and I graduated 81 from Central, and you were at Beecher. So, and one thing we also have in common, too, is we both know George Moss. You knew him back in his prime, I guess, before he became the George Moss we know now, who is the pundit here at All Points TV.
Yeah, I think he was a great inspiration in terms of, you could go to his class and he would always encourage you to read, and he would talk about his documents, and he would take notes, quite often written in hieroglyphics, but at any rate, we had a really good time in the classroom, and there was always students coming to his class at the end of the day as well. And so he is really a hero to a lot of people. Mm-hmm.
Because when I first met him and I found out he was Beecher, and I remember you and I's conversations back at Mott, and actually, quite frankly, a lot of ways you were really more prepared for the political conversations than I was. I mean, you had some ideas you got from an unusual source. I mean, we were talking about that briefly before we started this interview, but you actually as I got to know Mr. Moss, I could see where you could probably have been inspired, because the way you cited stuff, I could see that reflected the way he cites his information. The way you reference books that you've read, I can see the parallels. Once I knew him and I knew you, and I had already known you, I knew that there was a strong connection, and I knew that he had taught at Beecher. So
well, we have to credit Mr. Moss with really getting us to look into the African American experience, because in his classroom we not only had the regular textbook, but we were also reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and he would always throw books on the board, write books on the board and encourage us to read. And he would even take us down to the shrine in the Black Madonna in Detroit on Livernois, and we would pick up books there. And I recall one time, I believe I was out of high school at this point, but he took a group of students down to Detroit to meet with Malcolm X's brother, Wilfred Little, and we had breakfast with him and sort of tried to get some insight on Malcolm's experience in the Nation of Islam, and how the split occurred, and what was going on at the time when Malcolm decided to leave the Nation of Islam and formulate his organization of Afro-American Unity.
So I didn't know about that, because I've known him for like 8 years now, 8 or 9, because he's been coming into the studio doing shows for quite some time. And I never heard of reflecting. I remember in that era, we grew up within a year of each other, graduating. So we grew up in the same era. I can't remember any other high school teacher in the Flint area actually engaging students to that level. So, that's quite remarkable. I wasn't aware of that meeting with Malcolm X's brother. And there's Mr. Moss, I've known for quite a few years, like I said, and he's still kind of an enigmatic person. He's definitely taken on the chin for his views, and the thing is, this guy seems to enjoy it, so, he's quite, I can't say I disagree with a lot of stuff. What he says, I pretty much have the same thing or similar thinking to, but he's definitely, you can't say that he hasn't done his research, and nobody can accuse him of that. He might come up with different conclusions as they would, but he's done his research.
Well, that's probably okay if you come up with different conclusions than what other people are saying. That's okay. And but I think that he not only influenced me, but he influenced a great deal of people to read African American history. And so when we went to his class, that was probably one of the only classes that I can recall where we were able to learn about the African American experience, which really has something to say about the educational system here in that many students are engaged by. I mean, my stepdaughter right now was asked to read To Kill a Mockingbird. But at what point in time will they ask her to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, or Malcolm X Speaks, or the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass? I don't think those will be available to her.
See, that's sad, because I think that's so I've never been a person for we kind of talked about this earlier just before we started this, basically about scripting the learning, scripting the educational experience, coming down from some group on high, mandating what's going to be taught. And I think that's the issue with, I've always had issues with what was taught in schools, even when I was in there. I mean, my parents my mom in particular was kind of a critic of the educational system at that time, and she was like, I guess you would come to consider like a proto-hippie in some ways, because they're a proto-feminist, but she kind of rebelled against her family. She left the Catholic Church when she was divorced from her first husband, and she chose to become a Protestant because she didn't like the Catholic Church's treatment of women, especially on the issue of abortion and stuff like that.
Your mom was pretty radical.
Yeah, so by that standard, yeah. But she was never like the ones like now, some of the, I'd say the 60s brow-burning, feminists, but she questioned the treatment of women, from her own personal experience. But she also had a real issue with the public school education system, because she thought, and she went to a Catholic school system here most of her entire life. I think 12 years out of 13 years of most of us go through education. She went to St. Matthew's here in Flint. And she had a problem with it too, because she basically thought kids should have more of an find something that kind of was connected to what they were teaching, and let them find their own resources, read what they wanted to do. And so she'd been in agreement with what, the issues you have, I think, with education.
Well, they have students finding things, but they have students finding that the page number in that particular textbook, and reading the pages, let's say 6 through 9, and then finding those questions at the end of that reading selection, and spitting back information on the test within the confines of the material that was in the book provided to them. So it is scripted, and it's more so scripted now because students are asked to do certain assignments certain days. So on Tuesday at 1 o'clock you should be doing this. On Wednesday at 1 o'clock you should be doing that. So there's a lot of control right now. It's scripted learning, which is the narrowest approach to education that you can ever have.
And I see, the thing is, I remember our conversations from, college, especially Mott, which is, like I said, 82, 83, when I first got out of school. You seem to be quite a bit with it. I mean, I really respected that, because you're coming from in some ways, you're coming from left field for me, because I didn't know how anybody read the information. It was Dante's Inferno back then. Dante's, the Divine Comedy, the whole thing. Yeah, I guess you seem to use that in a different context than most people would use it for, and that fascinated me, because I saw that you had some kind of depth of education, depth of thinking that was lacking a lot of people, including to some degree myself. I mean, that was always kind of really said, this is, I don't know if I agreed with your conclusions, but at least you had read something so unique and had such a unique view of it that has kind of surprised me. So,
the word education, the TION means the act of, and duck means to lead, and the E in the word education means out. So actually the word education is the act of leading out. Now what we really should be doing is teaching students how to draw knowledge out. And the only way in which you can, well, not necessarily the only way, but one of the most effective ways to do that is to teach students how to formulate their own questions. Now, the question is, do we want to teach students in this country how to think, how to question? Because they may begin to question people who are in power. And I think we saw renditions of that in the 1960s. And so I think that the current state of education, what it really does is it doesn't free the mind. It's a colonization process. The mind is being colonized and it's not really liberating the minds of people by getting them to question everything.
Now, I remember when I was a kid, and remember when I got older, I was reading and hearing that the average factory worker, and say when we were on a former GM base, this was the headquarters of General Motors. That's for the viewers out there. I mean, we're fully aware of what was here, but a lot of people would actually say that. And I remember this being actually a criticism of like when they wanted to start in earnest, creating the University of Michigan's campus here, here in Flint. That some people were saying, I remember this right because I worked for U of M. I remember this being part of the display there at the library, that the display of quotes from people, and they're saying that these blue collar people, I can't remember the exact quote or who said it, but blue collar people are unable to actually have an unambiguous or ambiguous thinking, engage in ambiguous thinking and value judgment, and they basically try to think that, and there was probably some truth to that, being, that we were actually taught what was what was good for us to learn for employment in the factories. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was taught to do welding for 2 years at high school. Mm-hmm. Didn't really remember choosing that option myself because my dad wasn't a factory worker; he was a postal worker, and basically he didn't have the skill set even a welder was. I mean, he unloaded and loaded trucks. Mm-hmm. He was a mail handler, and that was an apt name. I mean, that was very definite what they did. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I can see the criticism of basically just turning out a product, and that's what we are involved with. And I think
and they're turning out products out of these schools too.
That's exactly right. I mean, and I think more so though. Well, years ago, I think it was more so, and I'm surprised to hear you say that because I remember teachers saying that basically they just want us to teach you, to you students what was good to become a good factory worker. That's what the GM was trying to do, and they're enforcing the government to actually script things so you can be a good factory worker. How to punch a clock, be punctual, be obedient.
Work related type of things, and not necessarily trying to inspire you to engage in deep inquiry about what was going on in life itself and what was going on around you.
It's like I go to Stick song because I was like, I love pop music, and there's this one song, we got basically from Styx says basically we stop and wonder who the hell we are, why are we doing this? We're basically put on this thing. They were recognizing that in that song that we were basically set up on this treadmill basically, and we do these actions. Let's face it, we drink coffee in America for why? Because it was actually good for being a factory worker. Mm-hmm. It kept you fueled. Mm-hmm. You'd have a coffee break 3 to 4 hours into your workday, mm-hmm. because they wanted you to be fired up to go do a 4 or 5 or 6 hour shift. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, our consumption of foods is sugar-based, caffeine and sugar. The high-energy food, so we can keep high-energy levels going to produce for the day. Mm-hmm. And our thinking was that way. Basically, we said, it's us against them. And I had friends who lived in GM towns and other places in other parts of the country that, well, I can't say fully GM because this was the GM town. Right. But they said they never seen such a pronounced us against them mentality between the white collar and the blue collar as they did here in Flint. Mm-hmm. And that's large because that's what it was. These people became this, we were this. There's some intermingling, and there wasn't this huge class war, but there's an acknowledgement even in those who were the most closed-minded didn't examine that this is us and them. Mm-hmm. And they just accepted that though. There was just us and them. They never, why is this us and them? Why are these demarcations? Why are there these two definitive classes?
Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes we just kind of go through life just kind of on automatic. We never really stop and think deeply about what's going on. And I think Flint is really waking up because people are trying to figure out why it is that the governor is making decisions that threaten the public health and safety. And so what we have in Flint, in my opinion, is as a sleeping giant. And many of the Flint residents have been experiencing or really had their focus in on shooting and partying and things of this nature, hanging out, just chilling. But with the water crisis that came about, I think it has caused a lot of people to wake up, and people are waking up to the fact that they can't really trust the kind of decisions that are coming out of Lansing, and that these decisions are being enforced by Flint the Flint leaders as well. So we can't trust that anymore. So now the Flint residents are waking up. The sleeping giant is waking up now, and now that's we're going to see what we're going to do about this problem.
Okay, so tie this together a little bit. We're talking about the mindset that existed before the pullout of GM. And now we've been basically cut off from the possibility of employment. Most of us have from GM for 30-some years now. Since about sometime in the 80s it started. We knew the realization that they weren't going to come back. These jobs weren't. There's some here, but and they've. Well, anyway, and say if you can, this is kind of a mental exercise, but a what if scenario. But say if there was a water crisis, it begs the question: would the water crisis been so crucial as it is now? Because if GM had not pulled out, we would have the resources, financial resources largely, to prevent to rebuild basically on our own, from the tax base. Mm-hmm. But anyway, do you think there'd been this more reaction about questioning things? Say if we hadn't seen GM pull out, and basically that we couldn't accept, we could start seeing flaws in the thinking that we couldn't question what the government was doing. And I think this is a healthy thing. But I mean,
what is healthy?
I think it's healthy now that people are actually so outraged by the fact that. But see, I'm a libertarian. My point is like this: is okay. You think you've been betrayed by the government, the Snyder administration on this issue. Yeah. But yet you're still going to. A lot of the same people are looking for the federal government to be the savior in all other crises. Yeah. Crises. So I mean, I think it's like basically you got to ask the question is like if you didn't trust the local government and the state government, what makes you think you trust this faceless larger government on a larger scale?
Well, I'm not for sure if you can trust any of them. This is why you have to kind of watch your back against all of these jokers, so to speak. You got to watch your back against the state and watch your back against federal as well. You can never take for granted that people are going to do something for you, especially people who are in positions of power who have money, because they really cannot connect with the everyday person. Now you have somebody like Donald Trump. You have Mr. Trump going around and trying to connect with the everyday person, but he's trying to connect with the people through their prejudices, through their fears. But the bottom line is, Mr. Trump does not really connect with the poor, everyday, poor working class person.
So I can say the same thing too, though, because I mean, I look at President Bill Clinton, and I look at Barack Obama, and none of them people had jobs. I mean, not jobs that you and I probably want, maybe McDonald's or fast food or someplace. Yeah. None of these people, I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican, I don't see them actually. Bill Clinton, I know for certain, never held a job outside of government. Never. He never held a job doing fast food. He never washed windows, scrubbed floors, never did anything. Yeah. He was always like the golden boy, went to Oxford with his Rhodes Scholarship. He never, and so I think that's endemic to politics. The political class seems to be largely cut off from the people they're supposed to make this appeal to.
Yeah, I don't believe, and this even goes back to Kennedy. I recall when people was wondering if Kennedy could connect with the poorest people, especially in the South and so forth. So this is a problem that has always existed. But what we're seeing is we need government officials in place who are gonna hold our interests, hold our interests in their mind, and begin to enact policies that really have a positive influence on our lives, on the day-to-day lives that we live. So I want to sort of redirect our discussion and move it directly into this whole issue of the water issue. And yesterday, my wife and myself and a young lady named Jacqueline, I won't say the last name, but we convened a meeting, and we came up with a set of demands, if you will, in terms of what it is that we would like to see happen with respect to the water crisis in Flint. First of all, we formulated a group called the Flint Improvement Association, which is really sort of a spin-off from the Montgomery Improvement Association back in the 1950s when Dr. King and his group formulated this group to deal with the bus boycott, the bus problem, desegregating the buses. So we came up with a series of things that we want, and I will read each one, and then if you would like, we could entertain some discussion.
Sure, that sounds great.
We, the undersigned, want, one, an immediate mobilization of FEMA and affiliated agencies to provide water, shelter, and piping infrastructure to protect Flint residents from lead contamination and other forms of bacteria that threaten the health, safety, and welfare of Flint citizens.
And being a Flint resident, I wholeheartedly agree on those. Because, I mean, let's face it, it's, you know, I'm doing as I can, you know, filters, bottled water, and I'm buying most of mine. I'm not, and I think people out there are more, you know, needy than I am financially, so I might pick up occasional case of water when I'm near the firehouse, but I mean, I'm not going out of my way. I can buy it at the store, the gallons and stuff, but some people can't, and I can't fault them for that. I mean, they don't have the resources, and it's ridiculous for having to dip into your other meager expenditures, you know, meager amount for expenditures, necessary expenditures to actually have this.
Right.
I mean, on top of it. So I agree with those demands, those you know, those concerns
Okay,
being
then,
addressed.
so you're a Flint resident, so you know you can sort of verify this thing. The second one would be we want a total transparency regarding all funds sent to the state of Michigan and to Flint funding earmarked for solving the water crisis.
That's what doesn't ever happen here.
Yeah.
Is transparency doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah, let's. This is basically what we want. So, we want to know where the funding came from, who sent it, when, and how much has been expended, and on what. We also want to know the dates, when it was donated, where the funds reside, and who's in control of it. We want total and open transparency regarding the funding of all projects. So what we're saying here is that you, since you're a Flint resident, we want you to be able to know where the money is at and how the money is being used.
I think that's, in this era right now of, like, you know, we're on the computer, we're using this forum. If it's available for private individuals like we did for the studio, it's certainly available to the governments. As a matter of fact, if you guys are out there and we get this initiated and this goes through, if you want to use this studio as the means to make this transparency possible, we'd wholeheartedly welcome that. Because, I mean, my friends, I have a friend, when I first started doing a show, he said, what's wrong with using modern day technology for everyday transparency of government? A person logs in, has a webcam at their desk. He's say maybe down here at the Flint Waterworks or whatever. This is so-and-so, I'm such and such, this is my title. We give out the badge number or whatever. We are initiating this today, this day, this today. We hope to get this accomplished, blah, blah, blah. And then they say, okay, we'll check in and at the end of the shift and see what accomplished. They come in, they do this has to be 4 or 5 minutes. This wouldn't be that much time consuming. The equipment's there to do it. Then they put that out like we're doing right now. And they could put that up. That transparency, well, why can't we have the meetings broadcast? Exactly. I don't like the idea of private meetings and behind closed doors crap. I'm sick of that myself. So
So you agree with that?
I agree with that too, yeah.
All right, okay then. Let me see. The third one, we want the citizens of Flint to be directly involved in all decisions regarding finances relating to the Flint water crisis. Flint residents want to choose their team of residents to be directly involved in all decisions regarding the funding as it relates to the water crisis. So in other words, we want to send a delegation, Flint residents. Maybe it'll be you, but at any rate, it should be some people from Flint who should be involved also in the decision making regarding the finances.
And I think this is an educational process, because let's face it, we might not get the people who are the most well-educated or well-informed.
We got some, but I think that we probably do have some people that are well-educated and well-informed, and they may just so happen, they may just so happen to be unemployed, or they may be employed. But the point is, I think those people exist.
Right.
We may not know them, but I think we can probably put a group of really good people to go in there and actually advocate for Flint residents.
Well, I think the thing is, I'm seeing it too, though, is like even if they aren't that well informed initially, and they are becoming, and let's face it, they might have a smattering of knowledge on this, and they have some direction, but now they become more drawn into the process. Now we're actually creating people who are better potential to be future office holders in different capacities.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's an empowerment.
Yes. Okay, and then let's see, number 5, we want a continuation of bottled water to be sent to Flint for residents that is healthy to consume. So I know, I think it was Michael Moore who called for people not to send any more water. But we think that that is irresponsible. We're going to need water to drink. Just like you gave me this clean water right here.
Right. And so, it was given to us, by the way. That was somebody brought that in from the firehouse for us. So they said, I just stopped by and I'll drop this off for you. So
excellent.
I agree with that too, because I mean, Michael Moore. I appreciate some of the stuff he's done in this instance.
Things, yes.
But I think that's like, I know what he's done. I think the intention he did that for, to say, because he wants to put pressure on the governments to actually get the money together to actually make this not just a stopgap measure. And he doesn't want to see the popularity wane and basically to go by the wayside. So I can fully appreciate that. I can agree, but I can't fully agree with it because the water's still needed.
Well, there are other ways in which we can put pressure on them, and what I'm doing is I'm prescribing to you right now the pressure cooker, and I'm hoping that we can increase the pressure in this way, not by rejecting water coming to Flint residents, but by doing some other things, being a part of the decision-making process here. Number 6, we want the reestablishment of local control to all those who were voted into office by Flint residents. Giving an emergency manager total power contradicts our democratic institutions because it places all power in the hands of one person. This is a totalitarian system that obstructs our democracy. So I'm just saying that no one person needs to have all power. And that's essentially what you have with the emergency managers in position. And so this Darnell Early, who was the emergency manager, he decided to make the decision along with other people to change the water situation in Flint, and then he moved on down to Detroit and further destroyed their public education there.
And by the way, as an educator, and this is an aside, as an educator yourself, weren't you kind of surprised when the court ruled that actually there is no obligation to provide education?
I was shocked, and I thought that was a nightmare, and I thought it was a cop-out, because so often you've always said that, when the state makes decisions about this or that, obviously they're in control of education.
Right. So I mean, in other words, they don't want to be held accountable for if students are not educated. You see what I'm saying? If they can't read. So what it is it's okay for them to hold you and I accountable, but when it comes to them being held accountable, they want to change the rules of the game. It's just like this Darnell Early, which I read today, that he's resigning from Detroit.
His position from Detroit. So he thinks that he can run and hide. He doesn't want to be held accountable for the decisions that he made in Flint, and he doesn't want to be held accountable for those things that he has done to Detroit. So it's okay for him to hold the teachers accountable in Detroit and blame everybody for this or that. But when it comes down to him having to face the heat, he wants to run. And as my students say, it's not funny when the rabbit has the gun.
I like the way that's put, yeah.
Number 7, we want the development of a step-by-step plan by the governor describing the day-to-day work that will be done with start and completion dates, companies and agency, the names of companies and agencies involved. We want total transparency regarding this plan. We want Flint residents to be directly involved in making decisions regarding this plan and employed working as laborers and managers to complete the work needed.
I totally agree with this, because a couple of years ago I overheard, I was a bicycle riding around the county, and there was a road project going on, and people I overheard working on these projects were certainly not from people in this area. And I mean, that's a chance. If we're going to have this big, this shot in the arm economically coming in for the money to put this project in, I think people in Flint should also enjoy the benefit of it, because we've also suffered because of it, the lack of it, So I agree with that too.
Yes. The next one is we want an immediate moratorium on all water bills from Flint residents until this crisis is resolved. Resolved is defined as the moment when water flows into the homes of Flint residents that is free of lead and water and other harmful contaminants through a new piping infrastructure. So we're defining a resolution as water coming into the homes with new piping, you see. And then, so up to that point, I mean, there should be a moratorium on all water bills.
And then another thing is too, I think that's got to be done. I think you got to keep on these people at every step. So I think everything you've already listed should serve to do that.
Well, yeah, I think it does too. If you don't put any pressure on them, they're not going to do anything. It was Frederick Douglass who said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will." So the people who have power are not just going to lay down and give you power. You're going to have to be directly involved in taking that power in some kind of a way.
And I'd add to the quip that Al Capone's contributed with, is saying, you get more done with a kind word and a gun and you just with a kind word alone. So basically, let the law be the gun, let the people be the gun aimed at these people's heads. Because otherwise they will slack off. They'll do the payola. They'll have the favorite, the old boy cronyism going on. You got to keep these people accountable.
John.
Right.
You're kind of like a thug too, aren't you?
Yeah, because hey, I grew up in Flint. Okay,
they turned you into a thug too. This water crisis turned sweet old grandmamas and children into thugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you got to keep these people, because let's face it, we know how to play it here. We know we're sophisticated enough to know that if you don't keep on top of these people, they're going to be pissing away the money.
And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. The reason why my wife and my friend Jackie, we decided to come together and try to put something down on paper, because we know that everything will be in the control of the people who were undermining your health. But we want the people of Flint to be in control of this thing too. We want them to be involved, because you have to watch them, because they'll use that funny math in order to move that money away from the Flint, these Flint projects.
Right, yeah.
And they'll use it for something completely different.
You see somebody getting a new yacht, a new mansion.
You better believe it, baby.
Yeah.
Number 9, we want a 75% reduction in all water bills and a moratorium on all past water bill charges when the crisis began between 2013 2014. So we know that people are probably going to use the water for washing clothes or whatever the case may be, but they certainly should not be paying 100% cost for that, since the water is not is no good for cooking and consuming and things of this sort. So we think that the bill should at least be reduced by 75%, and any of their past water bills, they should not have to pay those charges. Number 10. We want Flint residents to play a direct role in determining the cost of water bills. No company should have total decision-making power regarding water charges during this crisis. Flint residents want to choose 3 to 5 resident members who will represent them in this process. So in other words, we don't want to relinquish power to just the water company to make all the decisions in terms of what the charges should be and things of this sort. We want Flint residents to be a part of that process as well, since they are the victims of this process.
I think all demands, all these ideas, demands are, I can't think they can be argued against. I don't think they're overly demanding. I really don't. I think it's common sense.
Don't hate, brother. Don't hate. All right. So Number 11, we want a total mobilization of medical and environmental organizations and agencies to monitor the health of children and all Flint residents. We want Flint residents to participate in all decisions regarding this matter. We want an ongoing monitoring system to determine the spread of lead poisoning and Legionnaire's disease, and a process for effective treatment designed to improve the health of Flint residents. A monthly report should be written in, quote, easy to understand language, unquote, to inform Flint residents of the latest developments.
I am absolutely agreeing with that as well. I mean, I think that I don't think it should be just given back into the hands of the city council members, because I don't think they have, or okay, maybe it's to be diplomatic. I don't think that they could actually so minutely focus upon that is to actually cover adequately. I think they have to have help, and then maybe that's
not a bad thing. Everybody working together.
No, that's not. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a slap in the face. I just think it's a recognition that sometimes things will take a back seat, and this should not be the back seat. This should be the major focus for I don't even know how long. It should be the major focus.
And who knows? And I tried. We my wife, Shelley, and Jackie, we tried to come up with a list of demands that would be somewhat flexible too as we move forward in time. The 12th thing that we want is the establishment of a political action committee that will organize candidates to run for political office. We have lost trust in the current leadership and assume the responsibility of identifying, training, and preparing Flint residents to become leaders who will speak, vote, create, and pass policies and laws on behalf of Flint residents. We will educate these leaders within the residential leadership forum.
I think that's a good thing. It's actually, let's face it, this could be a shot in the arm for not only the city, but you develop the talent, you develop the aptitude that people have for leadership to fill these roles. That could have almost unbelievable payout down the future and in the future.
Yeah, I just don't think that we can trust the people who have decided to poison our children and the Flint residents, and who have lied about it or had information for quite some time and did nothing about it. We just can't trust them. I mean, it would be equal to a woman, catching her husband cheating and then expecting to trust him totally. It's just not going to happen. You're dealing in a fantasy here. So what we want our young people to do, if they are smoking, we want them to put down the blunt and pick up the book and start reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, or Malcolm X Speaks, and Dr. King's books that he has written. And we want to gain inspiration and guidance out of this kind of literature. Excuse the expression, but to hell with the Killer Mockingbird. We need our people to be taking a look at the autobiography of Malcolm X, and not just African Americans. I'm talking all human beings need to take a look at that, because ultimately that's a human story. It's not a story just about an African American. It's a human story.
I think it's actually, from what I've read of it, and I've read some of it, and I've also, Mr. Moss and I have talked about Malcolm X's autobiography. There is it's basically about the absence of power in a person's life, not being empowered, to be powerless, to be at the mercy of other forces, and let's face it, those are universal themes. I mean, they're not that's not so uniquely African American. I mean, everybody at some point, their ancestors have gone through very similar scenarios. So I mean, I can see there's a value to be drawn from reading those kind of books myself.
Right, and I have this is sort of a tentative document, but it was brought to my attention by my two colleagues that we should add another, and that it's going to be something along the lines of calling for the governor to to resign from his position, or we want to participate in any kind of recalling process.
So I think he should be held accountable, and actually I think he should have to, serve out his term, but also serve out the overseeing some of those demands have to be subjected to some of those demands you're making.
Yes.
So I think that's what I'd say is like more fitting. I can't say punishment. So I'm above the mind too. I think that a lot of the city officials here dropped the ball. I don't think Snyder intentionally designed this to harm people. I can't imagine somebody that evil. But his actions did lead to this. He did ignore warning signs. He did ignore warnings and express warnings from other people. So I think he should be held accountable for that. But there are other people too that I think that it's just not one person that set this in motion.
I want to certainly expand the sort of the accountability ring, and we need to deal with that Darnell Early and all those people who are attempting to resign their positions and run because the FBI is investigating them, and other agencies are engaged in investigating them. These people need to be brought to court, because if I or you went out and poisoned the water system, whether we intentionally did it or not, we would be not only put in jail, we would be probably placed inside the bars that are in the jail, you see?
Right.
And so why should they get away? Is it because they're privileged in terms of financially? Is it because they have good diction, better than you and I? You see, is it because they are in a position of power, and people in positions of power should not be held accountable? Only the poor should be held accountable? You see? So if that's the case, I mean, we're dealing with a class issue too, which we are dealing with a class issue anyway. That's the real deal, baby. That's
what I'm going to say, because it's like, I kind of get pissed when I hear people say it's a racial issue. It's like, gee, if these are white folks doing it and they don't care because it happened to the black folks, then I'm being shut up because those other white folks who don't care what they're doing to me. So I mean, they don't care because your checkbook's not fat enough, and that's what it is. I mean, they don't care about anything but. Let's face it, they're never going to meet you.
Look,
that's why I think leadership should be so important.
See, the thing about it is, it's race, but it's not just race. It's class, but it's not just class. You dig what I'm saying? So there is a need for you and I to understand what class is and what race is, so that we can begin to ask the kinds of questions that we need to ask that relate to issues around race and class, gender, and all these other kinds of categories. We need to be able to pose all of these questions to these people who have power. And that's where we talk about education, the need to teach students to question and to give them the freedom to question. And they need to know that part of being a human being is asking questions, because right now it has a negative connotation to it if you're asking questions, because it's sort of an admittance to being ignorant about something. But really, the question is the basis of all education, and that's why I defined education as the process of drawing out.
I love that, by the way. I never heard it that way, and I think it's a unique way of defining it. I really do.
I think the schools are so interested in pouring in, but they never give opportunities for students to draw out and to engage in investigations themselves. We want this young generation to be engaged in asking people who have power questions, and we want them to hold these people who have power accountable. And this is what I mean, that the sleeping giant in Flint is awakening. And it's through crisis that awakens them. And I think it's even been less shootings in the city of Flint since this water crisis. So this thing can be a good thing. It's even saved lives, although it's put lives under threat as well.
Well, see, the way I look at it too, though, the way I look at this, though, too, if they get the money so we can actually do the restructuring of, the infrastructure, redoing it, okay, they want to attract business here or people to relocate here or whatever. That's one fear that they can put to rest. The water system's safe now. I mean, let's face it. It's like it's the worst case scenario has already been realized. So now we've actually corrected that. It's good. And now that actually might encourage growth in the future. And that might be a payoff 25 years down the road. But let's face it, we're spending money now. And I use this all the time. People get mad at me for saying it. We're giving $11 million per day, each and every day, throughout the year, to Israel, of a nation of less than 6 million people. Okay? Can I ask you a question? What benefit do most of us derive from that state of existence? Nothing. So why the hell are we not...
no interest, in other words, no direct interest.
Right. What kind of interest, other than you just like this kind of like soft and fuzzy, they're fellow humans, or that, they're the only democracy in that part of the world, which really can be argued against that position. But why are we supporting that and then balking at helping our own people out?
Yeah.
That's asinine, in my opinion.
Well, there are other questions, such as why is it that in 2015 there were 23,144 bombs dropped on these Muslim countries, in the Middle East. All of these bombs, how much did that cost? How many young people could have been sent to college free? You see, with the amount of money that was used in spreading death over there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you see, I'm that person. I'm not I don't believe in large amount of social spending. I think a lot of it can be, a lot of it is like, siphoned off in somewhere else. Somebody enjoys the benefit of it, and the goods aren't delivered to where they're intended. So that's the reason why I object to that. But because there is lack of oversight, even on this level.
Yes.
And this is what we're discussing about with the water thing here, should be applied to every aspect of our government. Every aspect.
Yeah, baby, what we have to do is we have to keep our eyes on these people who are in control of this money, because we want to make sure that every dollar down to the penny is spent in correcting this problem here in Flint. We want those pipes removed, and we want new pipes put in there, and we don't want to wait. I'm 54 right now. I don't want to wait until I'm 84 when this thing is done, because I have a fabulous father-in-law and mother-in-law and relatives that reside in Flint, and you're not going to play with their lives like that. This is serious business, and it's not just people who I'm associated with. There are people, other people who feel the same way that I do about my relatives.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's...
So we want this problem to be resolved, and we don't want to wait 100 years for this thing to get done. And this is why we have to run our own candidates, so that we can make sure that we protect ourselves against any further ignorant ideas that may come from government officials in the future. We need to take our own destiny in our own hands, run our own candidates, and put our own people in there. And I'm talking about mayor, I'm talking about governor, and the governor chooses his own cabinet. Well, we should be choosing our own cabinet, our own members, to get the job done, to make sure everything is done correctly. Not just for Flint, but for Detroit as well. They don't need to be under an emergency manager. So a person who has dictatorial power in a democracy, that's called hypocrisy. So what we want is the people to have power now.
So I can see your point, and I can say that we spent we just alluded, we spent billions and billions or trillions of dollars added up over the years to export democracy, yet we're letting it go here pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, you're exporting democracy, all right, because you don't have it here in Flint. Anytime you have an emergency manager in positions who have dictatorial power, you certainly exported it out of Flint, and I don't know where it's gone.
Right, and it's like I agree. So, are there any more points on that? That's like I guess, for lack of a better term, it's like a manifesto. I mean,
well, pretty much. We're just saying that we just don't trust the governor and probably just government officials overall. And he has destroyed the bonds of trust of the Flint citizenry by reckless decisions and engaging in practices that threaten the health and safety of our citizenry. And we therefore don't believe that he is fit to hold a governorship in the state of Michigan, and he needs to move on. He needs to get out of town before sundown.
Would you want somebody to appoint a new governor, or would you want to have another special election? What would your off the cuff opinion be on that?
Yeah, well, if we could, we should probably have an election so that we have a chance to put someone in there that has some sanity, and we want the voters to be involved in deciding that. And if that person gets in power and he doesn't do right by Michigan residents, then he needs to know that we're going to be breathing right down his neck, making sure that he is taking care of business the way it needs to be, that promotes health and safety here in the city of Flint. We love our children, and when you start threatening the health of people's children, that's an act of war. And let me also point out too, just as a side point, when you're dropping bombs also in Syria and you're killing their children there, and you're dropping bombs in Iraq and you're killing their children there, that's an act of war. So don't think that people can make friends by dropping bombs, and don't think that you can make friends with Flint residents by dropping poison in the water. It's not going to happen, baby.
And I can understand the anger because I'm here, and it's like I can see that anywhere. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to that. And it's going on. I mean, I guess there's been reports now that lead levels are quite high, real high in other areas other than Flint in Michigan here, and it's like wondering, why is this permitted, and why is this continuing going on? Why hasn't there been screeching halt? I mean, that's one of the few functions. I'm a libertarian. The few functions I think the government's supposed to have maybe is production, water, sourcing for the entire communities, and there should be an adequate enough of funds from the tax base and from the fees coming in from water and sewerage. So, I mean, why aren't they doing this? Where's that money going? And it's like the taxes on the for like fuel taxes, for the to improve the roads or to maintain the roads. Where the hell that money's going? Where the hell is that money going? Social Security on the larger scale. Why isn't that money there? Well, one president decided he wanted to give a gift to two countries, so he drew from there back in the 80s, and that's George Bush the first. So I mean, I mean, let's face it. I've voted more Republicans when I was a kid, younger. I side with them. But when they do something stupid, I call them on it.
Well, you know what? I think that we're at a point where both the Republicans are really acting up, and but one thing about them, they seem to have an agenda, and the Democrats seem not to have one. They are more reactionary than planning anything, in my opinion. So I think both of them are culpable. Both of those entities, the Republicans and the Democrats, are playing a role in really destroying the country. So that's why we need to run our own candidates, whether you be a Democrat or a Republican.
So I don't even know what good.
A Democrat though, but we certainly don't want any kinds of decisions to be made that put our children at risk. We're just not going to tolerate that in the city of Flint.
No, and I think that's healthy. But anyway, so if people want to be part of this, is there a way to contact you, join a group? Do you have a Facebook page or web page yet?
You can contact me. I'm on Facebook, Lamar Davis, and if you like, you could friend me and send me some messages, and then I'm going to give you my email address as well.
Okay.
My email address is lamdav69@yahoo.com, and my telephone number is 810-309-7681. But what we would like to do is we would like to use these 12 to 13 points as a sort of a negotiating tool something to lay down on the table, because my wife and my friend Jackie, we felt that what we had seen in writing was probably not sufficient enough. It wasn't direct enough. And we wanted to put something down in writing that would give the people of Flint power, not just black people, but all people. We want also everyone in Flint, no matter whatever your racial makeup is, if you're a human being, we want everyone to come together to back these, these demands, if you will, so that we can get this ball rolling in the city of Flint. Because we feel if we continue to go down this road, almost nothing will be done about it. I mean, they'll give us water and they'll give us filters that don't filter the lead, and we'll think that we're making progress when in reality we're going backwards.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you for coming in, and also encourage you to maybe make this a semi-regular habit of coming here and discussing this. And do you have a name for the organization already?
I do. It's the Flint Improvement Association.
Okay, Flint Improvement. Okay, I remember that. I want to make sure that's covered.
And, the reason why we chose that name was because
Montgomery.
And it's sort of a broad name too. So we don't have to limit ourselves to the Flint crisis. We can be flexible and change some of these things that we want.
I can see this having effect on an impact way beyond, hopefully, when this is in the rearview mirror, the water crisis. I can see this actually gain momentum and actually have a far-reaching impact than just this. So I thank you again for showing up, Lamar, and again encourage you and your group as it gets bigger, bring more of the people speaking of that to come into the studio. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Mm-hmm.